Yes. So to kick things off, Mike, and it's super interesting that you've been involved both on the change management technology and on the people side. And as with many of our conversations, it always ends up with talking about people. So with regards to our our evolution towards Industry 4.0, it feels like we're at an inflection point. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, we really are at an inflection point. What we're seeing is that a lot of folks are trying to move on Industry 4.0, but are not maybe taking the time they need to in order to prepare their culture and their teams to be able to make the change that they need to make. So there are still a lot of challenges out there, Martin, that we've got in the workplace.
So when you say change their culture and their teams, what do you mean by that?
Well, so a lot of times what we see is the technology today is much more affordable, and so it's also much easier to put into practice. But like with any change, it requires us to work differently and think differently. And so a lot of folks that I see haven't prepared their environment for adopting that new technology and learning how to work differently and engaging the teams in really understanding how to leverage the new technology.
It's interesting to sort of mention the cost implications here, because at some point, I don't know when somebody coined the phrase "data is the new oil," but at some point, that statement combined with all these IoT sensors, different ways to collect data. Of course, everybody in manufacturing went and started collecting all this data, and flipped it on with a switch. But at some point, for the folks on the shop floor who aren't used to things changing so quickly, I think in some ways many organizations have missed the opportunity to properly manage that change and have ended up in a rough spot. I guess in your experience, like you mentioned specifically that the cost was a trigger for that. Is that something that you experienced where new technology was brought in too quickly?
Well, I think what I've seen is that we'll get enamored with a new toy, so to speak, and then we really don't know how to leverage it to make the most of it. I'm thinking back. It's interesting you asked. We talk about this idea of change. 20 years ago, we were putting paper. We were putting paper in to capture all the data we wanted to capture, so we could do the analysis and drive problem solving. And so the real challenge we face is how do we, now that we can, more easily capture the data, more of it, and have more relevant information, how do we make the transition from our paper habits, if you will, to using the data collection systems that are now available in order then to drive the problem solving and making that transition. It's almost like you have to make a whole new deployment, much like we did when we first put the paper on the floor.